All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Arizona Equity and Inclusion.
Yep.
We are here with Susan Metallo today, and we are going to read our anti-harassment statement first
Mhm.
before we get started. So as a reminder, SCBWI has a policy of supporting diversity and inclusion. This is a place we set aside for Kidlit creators and translators to meet, exchange ideas, and support one another in our efforts to bring great books to all children. Part of the reason we do this is so they can see themselves and others reflected in their lives. We specifically focus on the art, craft, and business of publishing and try to keep on topic so everyone gets the most value from our time together. If you have any questions about this, please see the anti-harassment policy posted on the SCBW website. We are so excited to have Susan here. She is a young adult author and librarian. Her debut novel, Reasons to Hate Me, is a hilarious and heartfelt novel about a neurodivergent theater nerd that tackles slut shaming, what it means to be a friend, and the power of forgiving others and yourself. It is on the Publishers Weekly Best Books of 2025 and was selected by the American Booksellers Association for the Indie Next Kids and Indies Introduce Kids. We are so excited to have you here with us. Thank you for joining
Extremely.
us.
I'm so excited to be here. It's my favorite thing about SCBWI has been getting to meet people from other regions and make friends and chat with people. So
And just so everyone knows, Susan is the regional advisor of New Mexico chapter. So we're very excited to have you
Yes,
for that reason too.
extremely. Yes.
yeah, we're neighbors.
Yes, yes, we have.
Pretty much.
Yes.
And for those who don't know, I'm the head of E&I. This is my co-leader, Karen, and my name is also Susan. So it's we're winning. We're outnumbering Karen. So with that said, so we asked you to do this interview for this month, April, because it is Autism Acceptance Month. And when I originally reached out, I asked if you would do it for Autism Awareness Month. And you very graciously corrected me. And I just wanted to give you a chance to maybe explain a little bit more in detail why the wording of that is important to you in particular as an autistic person.
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing I would say is that, I wasn't in the least bit offended when somebody says something like Autism Awareness Month, or something like that, because intention really does matter. And I don't know if this is the same for people from all marginalized groups, but at least myself and many of the autistic people that I know really feel like there's a lot of ignorance that is not ill-intentioned, if that makes sense. That, like, because of the way that autistic people are portrayed in media and just like the lack of representation, like you just might not know what the preferred terminology is. So I think this is a really important conversation to be having. And then it's also important to know that not everybody prefers the same language, even if we belong to the same community. So for me, I prefer autism acceptance because awareness makes it sound like a disease. And autism is not actually a disease. It is considered a disorder. It has a diagnostic criteria. It is part of the diagnostic criteria is that there is some sort of disability associated with it, which can really vary from person to person. Um, but for some autistic people, and myself certainly included, a lot of the disabling aspects of it are largely caused by society not being accepting, or society being built for people who are allistic, which is just a word that means non-autistic. And so categorizing it as like a disease is feels unhelpful because there's nothing about me that needs to be cured. There's something about the world that needs to be cured, if that makes sense. But people obviously feel varied ways about being autistic and about diagnoses, things like that. I And I do want to acknowledge that, I am a speaking person, uh, which again, I know non-speaking people who use the same terminology that I use, but like obviously I have a lot of privilege from sitting here speaking with you vocally, and my doing well on SATs and things like that. That's not universal in the autistic community, and so anything that I say today about my experience as an autistic person is just my experience and not universal to the whole community.
Yeah, I think that is. I'm sorry, I'll be taking notes throughout. But I think that's very well said, and it's important to clarify that. And I completely understand, and I think we were both just like, oh, okay, yes, that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Yeah, so
Mhm.
thank you. All
Yeah,
right, so jumping into the interview questions about your book, would you mind telling us about your journey to publication, first of all?
sure. Yeah, so my journey was sort of the textbook journey to publication, which is that I wrote some terrible books and then some bad books and then some mediocre books. And then I wrote a pretty good book that I queried, and it didn't go anywhere. Um, and that was in 2020. I think I was querying that fantasy novel, and all the feedback I was getting is that the market was saturated with fantasy, and fantasy wasn't selling, which is so funny to me today when now I was like extreme opposite because the industry changes so much in such a short time. But then I wrote Reasons to Hate Me, and the one on the far side, the blue cover, that's the hardcover. And then the purple is just a printout of the new cover for the paperback because I love it. So I just put it up there just so you can see. Um, but yeah, so I was writing that one kind of, I had thought of the idea before the pandemic, was writing it during shutdown. And then that one, it was one of those right book, right time kind of books. I mean, not that it's about the pandemic or anything, but it had a lot of interest and it started piquing interest in multiple areas. So I had an agent offer, I got an SCBWI award for it, so it was the right book. So that got me my agent, and it got a publishing deal. I had a two-book deal. So the second book in that deal comes out in September, and that is actually a different genre. It's YA historical,
Oh,
because I enjoy historical fiction and my editor likes it too. So that was a nice surprise, I think. I didn't know that that would sell, but it did. And then I have a third book coming out next September as well. So basically, like I went through the steps that SCBWI tells you to go through. Like I took the query writing classes and I worked on my craft and I did all the critique groups and everything. Um, but at the end of the day, it was just part of it was just luck, like having the right book at the right moment. The hard work is a necessary step, but it also isn't a guarantee. And I think, I'm sure most of you have had that experience as well. If you've gotten a book published or, there's a certain amount of serendipity that comes with it. There's something that's out of our control. Like we work as hard as we can to control as many things as we can control. But in the end, there's some parts that are just out of our control. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. And that's something we've been interviewing people for, gosh, a year plus
Yeah.
at least. And pretty much everyone has said some version of that as well. Like, do what you can, but just be ready for different opportunities because you never know when or what. So I appreciate you speaking to that as well.
Yeah. Can I ask, so you had two-book deal and then was your third one an option?
it was an option.
Okay.
So yeah, so when I signed the deal, it was for Reasons to Hate Me and a second book to be agreed upon.
Okay.
But I had already pitched two books to my editor, like in our initial conversation, because publishing is slow. So, while I was querying reasons, I was writing hearts. And then while we were getting the deal for reasons, I was drafting this third book, right? So, in our meeting with my editor, Andrea Tampa at Candlewick, my agent kind of nudged and was like, Susan, would you like to tell Andrea about any of your other product projects? Um, and I was like, why, sure. So that was how we got the two book deal, is because I had already pitched a second book that she knew and a third book. So
Okay.
it was a two book deal and there was an option, but we kind of knew what those
Third
were
one.
gonna look like. But there were some snags in getting the option deal because, as I mentioned, publishing changes quickly. And so the market had taken a real downturn. And so we did get a deal for the third book. It took longer than we had hoped, and it was significantly less than the last book. And what was interesting was, um, and I share this not to be like ungrateful that I have book deals. Like, I love that I have book deals, but just to give you guys, if you're sitting watching this and being like, well, I don't really understand these general things about the market. So like in 2023, when this book sold, they were like, oh, this number that they've offered, it went into auction, right? And then it got a good number. They were like, this is really great for a YA contemporary. And then I don't have a picture of it, obviously, because we don't have a cover yet. But with my next YA contemporary that comes out in 2027, um, the number that the agency and all the agents were like, oh, this is a really good number. This is great for YA contemporary, was almost exactly half what this number was. So,
Oh.
when you're an author, when you're essentially an entrepreneur, like you're selling a product, which is your book, and it's going to sell for market value, whatever that is, in the moment that you're selling it. And
Oh,
that can really change drastically from year to year.
like what,
3
3 years?
years
Yeah,
ago.
3 years.
Years ago, and it
Wow.
halved. That's
Hmm. Yeah.
crazy.
Because
Yeah.
ironically, fantasy is back.
Because fantasy's back. Right. Well, and it's also, I think the whole market has shrunk so much in the last 3 years. And
It's
yeah,
just
that's across the board.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
the reality.
yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, thanks for that and rejecting. That's good perspective to add.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your book, and I have a copy too, the
Oh,
copy that you
yay.
sent me. Thank you.
That's
And
great.
let's see, where is it?
Signed.
Sign,
Signed.
sign.
So exciting.
I read it before you sent it to me, and then I loved it so much, I was like, okay, I have to buy it and get my own personalized copy. So, with that said, please tell us all about your book. And we know that the main character is autistic.
Mhm.
Her name is Jess. Are there any other themes or related to autism or neurodivergence or anything else you purposely put into the story as well?
Yeah, that's really an interesting question. And it's so funny because when I started writing this book, I wasn't going to make Jess autistic, right? Because I had this in my mind that all the books I was seeing published were about, neurotypical, non-disabled, boring people, no offense. And so I was like, I'm going to write myself a neurotypical, non-disabled, boring person. And I think the reason that the book ended up working so well is because I relented on that and started to realize I'm accidentally writing an autistic kid anyway. So, I should just write the book that feels truest to me and stop stressing out about whether or not it's going to get published, because it's going to get sidelined for being niche or whatever. And I've been really pleased with the reception that it's gotten. And everything like that. But the initial idea for the book was just sort of a combination of doom scrolling and feminist rage. Like I was super upset at some news stories that I had seen, and particularly the comments under news stories where people just like when a woman witnesses a crime or is a victim of crime, they were just like picking apart her life and bringing up all these completely irrelevant details about her personality or her, life choices to sort of excuse someone else's violent actions. And I was really angry about it. And so I just sat down and kind of wrote a chapter that ended up being in this book. If you've read it, it's the cake chapter, which I think is the second chapter. I won't give any more details.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
But
the key chapter. Oh, okay.
the cake, because that's a true story. It's based on something that I actually did one time, not when I was 12, like the character in the book, but when I was 23 and in graduate school. And it's kind of a terrible story because it's about, really a lack of sort of an impulsive decision-making event that happens that she does that causes some damage to someone else's property. And then in my book, she has to apologize for it, and it helps her meet an important character in her life. In my real life, I did not apologize. I fled the state. And then when I came back,
State.
I literally did. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed, but I also can't stop laughing. And I know if I go downstairs and try to apologize to these people about this thing I just did, I will just laugh in their faces and that might make it worse. I'm going to take some time. And I drove to a friend's house in another state. And then a couple days later, I came back and they had cleaned up the mess that I had created and they had moved their patio furniture away from the railing, unless in case it would happen again. So, the point
Amazing.
was, this is a story that shows me in a really not great light, and but it was funny, and it kind of reminded me of this surrealist aspect of these news story comments where people would be like, well, I mean, yeah, she witnessed a murder, but also she snapped at her child, so she's clearly a bad mom, so I wouldn't believe her. Like, what? What does that have to do with how believable her cell phone video is? That makes no sense to me. And so it was just a document on my computer that I titled "Why No One Would Believe Me If I Ever Witness a Murder," and it told the story of the cake, and that was it. Like the title was the only thing that framed it in this feminist context. And I thought, like, that is an interesting concept for a book. So that's really what Reasons turned into was it's a every chapter is a different reason to hate this high school girl. And none of them are really reasons to hate her. It's ultimately coming around to like, human beings do stupid things and make mistakes and treat each other badly sometimes on purpose, sometimes by accident, and then we have to figure out how to apologize and grow and live together and keep moving forward. So I think in many ways the the fact that she's autistic and that her best friend is autistic is more of a just a secondary feature. Like I usually tell people when I write books that my goal is not to write books that are about being autistic, but books where autistic people get to do normal things and exist, because that's what I was lacking when I was growing up. That's something I didn't see a lot of. So, in this book, the autistic character gets to be like one of them, the main character gets to be ridiculous and do all kinds of embarrassing, hilarious things. And then her best friend, who's kind of the main antagonist, she gets to be kind of wounded and sometimes kind of a terrible person, but also sometimes genuinely, affected by the horrible choices her friend is making. And they just get to be high schoolers.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And then this one that comes out in September is kind of fun, Hearts on the Two Bowl, because it's a Shakespeare twist, and there's an autistic character in it. I made the autistic character be a character who has a revenge arc. So it's an autistic, morally ambiguous character who gets to kind of be a little vengeful and questionable at times. So
Very cool. Perfect.
What is it? Which Shakespeare is it based on?
it's based on Twelfth Night.
Oh my
So yeah.
God.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
That's
it's
a
a
good
dual
one.
POV. The main character is Viola, the equivalent of Shakespeare's Viola. She's called Violet in this book. And she was trying to help her trans twin brother flee from their dad, who is just like a total jerk. But they end up shipwrecked on this island. And on that island, she starts to fall in love with a boy, and she's never fallen in love before. So like there's that like Shakespeare stuff going on. And then the equivalent of the wise fool character in Shakespeare's play is my autistic character Faustina, based on Feste, and she gets to have some cool agency and other fun stuff. So
That sounds
I love it.
amazing. And is that set in well, you said it was historical, so it is set in
Mhm.
the past. Is it set in the place, time, and setting?
It is set in
Like this
what is today Croatia during World War One. So Shakespeare's play is set during wartime, and so I wanted to pick a wartime setting, and the name of the island in Shakespeare's play is Illyria, and that historical region is part of the Dalmatian coast, which was during World War One a separate country, but is now part of Croatia. And it just ended up being a really great parallel for what my characters are going through because all of my characters in the main plot characters are all queer in some very varying way. They all feel very put upon by their families telling them who to be, by society's rules telling them who to be when they're just teenagers trying to figure out who they actually are. And kind of the same thing was happening to the country of Croatia and the Kingdom of Dalmatia because they were under Habsburg rule. So the Austrians who are on one side of the war, but they used to be part of Venice, which is on the other side of the war, and like they're being conscripted into the army, but also they're ethnically related to the Serbs who are fighting the the Hungarians. So it was very like the setting really matched what the teenagers were going through.
Nice. Wow.
That's very cool.
That sounds amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So this kind of segues into my next question, which is where do you get your ideas?
Yeah, I think most of my ideas come from latent or not latent feminist rage, I would say. That's
Excellent. Excellent.
my main vibe. Yeah. Uh, and also, I do often pull from Shakespeare. I really like you can read Reasons to Hate Me along with Richard III if you really wanted to. You don't have to, but you could. Um, this one's overtly Shakespearean.
Right.
Although my next one is sci-fi, so that's not so much Shakespeare.
Well,
Um, but yeah, I write about things that I am feeling passionate about in a moment and that I don't have an easy answer to because I find books boring if they are didactic. I don't know if you guys like didactic books. I don't. So like when I'm writing, I'm thinking around a question that I can explore that doesn't feel like it has an easy answer. And I'm going to let my characters figure out their answer that I don't necessarily know what that's going to be when I start writing per se. And then maybe that will help me come up with an answer that may or may not be the same as my characters. And then maybe my readers can come up with an answer that, again, could be completely different from those other things. So, for reasons, it's very much like how do we be good to ourselves while being good to others? Like, where are these boundaries between kindness and be letting yourself be abused without standing up for yourself, where is the line between standing up for yourself and bullying? Like these things feel nebulous to me sometimes, and I think they feel nebulous to teens too. And so, it grew out of me reading these news articles, but it's a question that I feel like is relevant to people of all ages, including still relevant to me today.
right. Um, so Shakespeare is one well that you draw from, and it's a great one. But I also really loved how, in Reasons to Hate Me, Jess is a theater nerd.
Yes.
And I was wondering if perhaps that was a tad autobiographical as well.
Yes, for sure. So I'm really like, if you want to talk autobiography, I sort of split myself into two halves to make Jess and Chloe, and then like filled in other halves of who they were to make them complete people who were not me.
Mhm.
So I am kind of a musical theater nerd the way Jess is, but little more the way Chloe is, because I was a music major in college. I'm more of like the singing musical theater nerd than Jess is like the acting music. I mean, like I did drama in college. I mean, high school and a little bit in college. I was very bad at it. But very bad at that.
You tried.
I tried. And I loved it. And every time I go to New York for SCBWI, I always see a couple shows while I'm there because
Oh, that's
I
fantastic.
love it.
Have you seen anything recently that you really loved and would
Yes.
recommend?
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of things that are still um Operation Mincemeat is still on Broadway. The original cast has left, but it was really amazing. It's niche. I would say you have to be, it's like it's satire about Nazis.
Okay.
Um, and I have been listening to the cast recording several times a day since seeing it last January.
Okay, that's a
It's
good
great.
one. I love musical theater, so
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
so recommend away.
She's ready. Awesome. Well, so I was going to ask about inspiration, but I feel like we covered that already. So what I'll ask, r rather where you get your inspiration. So instead I'll ask, what would you like to inspire in others?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think, like I said, I don't like to write didactic books. I don't feel like I go in with a message per se,
Hmm.
except that one thing that is always part of my worldview when I am writing a book for teenagers, and maybe it would be if I wrote books for other ages too, but certainly for teenagers, is that I really believe that every single person, every single adolescent reading this, that they are not alone. They are not broken. There are other people in the world like them. And if they are anything like me, they don't necessarily believe that as a high schooler. And so I think when I'm writing, like you'll see in all of my characters and all of my arcs, it does tend to come through this like message of like, hey, there are other people in the world like you. You are not broken. You are not alone. And that's very true for Jess trying to figure out who she is as like she knows she's autistic, but like trying to figure out how to navigate high school as an autistic kid when it's hard enough to navigate high school when you're not autistic. And, she starts figuring out that, hey, maybe she might be asexual. Is that a thing? Like, does that even look like? That's that's part of her story. Chloe's trying to figure out how to navigate the world as an autistic girl who is also a Black American and is facing like a lot of stuff from all sides because also the way that her autistic traits line up are less like she practices masking really hard because the way her autistic traits come across, people misinterpret them as her like, and partly because of her race as well, is this that she's being brusque or she's being, angry or and so she's trying to figure out how she can just be herself when there's all these assumptions coming at her. And so I feel like what I hope that anybody who reads that book, regardless of whether you are like either of those main characters or maybe you're like some of the secondary characters who have different identities but are still really dealing with the same question, like I hope you come away feeling like you are everything you need to be as a human, just the way you are.
That's
Great
great. That's
message.
beautiful.
Yeah. And I do see that like in every
Mhm.
single character. It's like there were some characters that I expected to be a certain way. And then I was like, oh no. But they're like owning it,
Mhm.
and owning that part of themselves that is what they're like and that's who they want to be. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah,
Thank
same. I okay, so you brought up Chloe,
Mhm.
and she's wonderful and multi-layered as they all are in the novel. But as you said, she also has a different experience from the protagonist, being Black, presenting in a different way. And so one of my questions in general was, what techniques do you use when you write these diverse characters who are different from you? And so, like, Chloe is a great example. And just so, how did you go about approaching that?
Yeah, great question. So I would never personally myself try to approach a character who's who belongs to a marginalized community that I'm not part of, and if I don't like actually know real live humans well who are part of that community. Because I am not like characters don't just spring forth from my brain fully formed. Like I don't, I have to like draw traits from people I've really met in real life and create them into a person. Like I said, with Jess and Chloe, I kind of split myself in half, right? And I do that with a lot of characters, and sometimes I'm drawing from people who are not me at all to create these people in my books. And so one thing is to just like know people from a particular community and to like think of specific people and be like, okay, this specific person has struggled with this specific person I know has this awesome trait that makes them special and unique, and try to think about the characters I'm creating as fully developed humans. The other thing that I do, though, I absolutely read a lot of things primarily on the internet. Like, I will Google things like what is really annoying about Black characters in YA novels. And then I will read, like, because there are a lot of Black teens or Black young adults who read YA novels who are like, oh my gosh, I am so fed up with this trope or with this stereotype or with this. So then I can learn and I can be like, oh, that is an assumption I had. I need to work on that clearly in myself and then by extension in my writing. And then the final layer is to hire authenticity readers. So for Chloe, I actually hired two. I hired one myself before I queried because, I always feel like with an authenticity reader, I have to be willing to pull the plug on the whole project if they come back and be like, this is terrible. You're going to ruin people's lives by publishing this book. And then I can be like, okay, we need to really rework. Fortunately, that did not happen with Chloe. There were some things that I needed to rework a little bit. For sure, there were some places where Chloe just seemed to be there to support Jess's growth rather than to have a separate arc of her own and grow. And that's like important for any secondary character for good writing, but it's extra important when you're writing a marginalized character who's not from your own experience, because that's where it can start to become a stereotype and do some actual damage to younger readers. So that was something that I worked out with probably more with the second authenticity reader that my publisher hired as well. But it was also just really helpful because for Chloe, I put half of myself into Chloe, and I am white. So half of Chloe was my experience as an autistic white woman, and half of Chloe was, you know, people that I know and friends with who are Black Americans, but like both of my sensitivity readers were Black autistic Americans. And that was really important to have that intersectionality really integrated and have somebody look at it holistically and say, like, okay, I see this one aspect, I see this other aspect, but her experience of being both of these identities at the same time means that she'll experience this differently.
That is so cool. How did you find those, like before you queried, how did you
Yeah.
find sensitivity, that sense?
Um, I believe, well, I know who I ended up using was Salt and Sage. And they had an authenticity reader on their site who met my requirements, and so I submitted. the request to them, and they have like handlers, I guess. Like people who are the buffer between, so you're not just like reaching out and being like, "Hey, I
Mhm.
noticed that you're Black. Will you read my book?" And like, I don't know if you get this, Karen. I do some frequently get these emails as the RA at SCBWI from someone being like, "I see that you're in New Mexico. I know that Native Americans live there. Can you get one of them to read my book?" And I'm like, "Oh."
Wow.
Oh. So don't do that. If you want to be a community
Yikes.
leader, don't do that. There are uh, you know, groups where they will have an office administrator who will like you'll send in your work or a sample of your work, you'll send in like any triggers or content warnings, and they'll see if you match with one of their people. I think ways to find good sensitivity readers, like again, like Google it for starters. But there are lists of agencies, at least there were when I was initially looking. Since then, my publisher has hired all of my people. So they have lists too, and you don't have to hire an authenticity reader before you have a publisher. And your publisher may, if you have a larger publisher, so I'm with Candlewick, which is technically kind of in mid-sized, I guess they would call themselves, publisher. But certainly if you're at a big five, I mean, they should have funds to get you an authenticity reader because it's in their best interests
Mhm.
that you're not like throwing harmful tropes out into the world either.
Yes.
That's not good for them either. So, and they have people that they've connected with and used in the past that they have working relationships with. But yeah, if you're looking for yourself, um, look for groups of authenticity readers or editors, or for people with professional websites who are advertising their services as a sensitivity reader. Don't just reach out to random people of that community.
Say, hey, you know any Native Americans?
Awkward. It is
Oh
so awkward.
man. Oh, no.
I don't know how I would react as one myself. It's
I know. It's
Right.
it is cringe as
Oh,
my first thought too was something like that is just like you were saying earlier about being an autistic person is, if someone reached out to me like that, I'd be like, well, I'm just one person from one tribe with one experience. I don't know everything. So
yeah.
that
And
just
I mean, that's the important point of like getting a professional authenticity reader who is like has their mind geared for like, okay, these are like global harmful tropes
right.
that, because I absolutely have my friends read my books too. Like, I'm neurodivergent, I'm queer. I know lots of neurodivergent and queer people. We find each other like magnets. I let my friends read my books. They tell me some things that they're like, hey, I don't know about this. But they also tell me things that they resonate with that if I'm not sure about some things. So, like, there's a line in Reasons to Hate Me where Jess says that she always thought when she got older, when she got made it to high school, she would be more interested in dating and makeup and remembering to wear deodorant. And I thought that was hilarious. But I also had in my mind, I was like, this is a stereotype. I mean, it's like so true for me. The whole
Mhm.
remembering to wear deodorant thing, or like, generally like remembering personal hygiene routines. Like my brain is just like, that is not important. You do not need to focus on that. Cannot remember. But I was like, it could like play into, offensive stereotypes. Like, is it okay that I put this in here? And then every single autistic person, that friend that I sent this book to, like would flag that line and be like, this is so funny and so true. And so I was like, okay, it stays in the book.
Excellent.
yes.
So, on that note, I guess my next question is, have you run into any challenges writing or publishing as an autistic person? And if so, how did you overcome? I guess I say overcome them. That's just the wording I have. But how did you work with it, I guess is a better way to put it.
Yeah, this is this question. Susan sent me the questions in advance, so I saw this question. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this because my first thought about this question is just like, publishing is the nicest industry for my autistic brain that I have
Mm.
ever been in. Like it is
Wow.
because I can organize my own time and
Mm.
I can like there are so many things like very little of it is face to face and so there's a lot of less misinterpretation of social cues like I
Oh,
can
email.
interpret a professional email.
Yeah.
That's not a problem for me. So yeah, so I was a librarian in my first life. I still consider myself a librarian because I have the degree and I do trainings for librarians. But there were a lot of things about working in a public library environment that were really challenging for me,
Mm.
particularly because of certain autistic traits that I have and the way that interacted with the environment.
Mm.
And so I, you know, just from an E&I perspective in publishing, you always worry about like, oh, if I am writing from a marginalized perspective, will people understand my work and like and that's a valid concern. I think for me it's just so overwhelmed by this joy that like I can just, take my time. I can have my little schedule spreadsheet and I can work in breaks and naps and like, this all works for me.
That's
Um,
fantastic.
and I
Yeah.
also am really lucky too because my editor and my agent are both really supportive of me writing for a neurodivergent audience. And what I mean by that is like they are never like they will sometimes ask, they'll like, be like, I don't understand this. Is this something your autistic readers will immediately get? And like if the answer is yes, they're like, okay, and we move on. And if the answer is like, this might be because I'm a disability justice nerd and not all of my readers will be, I should probably clarify a little bit. And then that's where we'll push it to a little more literal or use more general terminology for something or something like that. But they're both really have been really supportive of that. My favorite, so I'm part of the Disabled Kidlit Writers Facebook group. And one thing that so many of us in that group get and we vent about because it's so ridiculous and annoying is that if you have an intersectional identity, you will get so many reviews from people being like, this book had too many themes because the main character was two things at the same time or three things at the same time.
Come
And
on.
so that's really annoying. But like if you're getting that, whatever marginalized communities you belong to, if you're getting that, you're not alone. Like again, back to my core messaging, you are not alone. There are others of us who get that. And so that's like annoying. But if you have a community, I think that's the antidote to a lot of like the low key stuff that is difficult. I think just having a community of people around you, a writing community, that's been really helpful to me. Yeah. And so I don't think there are any other particular challenges
Has
for
there ever been any like misunderstandings that you've had because of people like interpreting what you're saying is not what you were saying?
I haven't had that yet. I wonder if I will more with this book because this one is so much more queer forward.
Mm.
I do wonder whether that, but like nobody, like for example, that deodorant line, nobody has complained about that line. So
Okay.
there are things like that that I do. I feel like people have been pretty accepting of it. I have had autistic reader, at least one autistic reader for a contest whose comments back said that they didn't feel like Jess read as autistic. So that is something that like I think, this is why I preface this whole conversation with like I'm just one person and my experiences and particularly like because the experiences of autistic people can vary so much depending on the sex you were assigned at birth and or how you were socialized. I don't think there's been enough studies like for like if trans children who came out young enough that they were actually socialized as girls, like boys who were assigned male birth and then socialized as girls throughout their childhood, like whether those trans folks have the same experiences as us cis girls who were diagnosed with autism, but like it does vary experiences. So, a book that I write might feel very untrue to another autistic person. But I mean,
Right.
that's just to be expected, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make
Yeah.
sense.
All right. So, pulling back a little bit, I'd like to ask how you balance writing with other challenges in your life. For example, if you have a full-time job, you're a parent, etc.
Yeah, so I don't have a full-time job anymore. That, like I said, it was sometimes a struggle being a librarian with the executive function stuff. And
Mhm.
then once I had kids, it was a real struggle. So I went to freelance work. So I do trainings, I do some part-time stuff. I was a contributor to Publishers Weekly for a while, but all of that fits in my like flexible, organize my work life, which doesn't mean that I do a good job at work-life balance. It's hard with kids. It's hard with kids.
Everything is hard with
Yeah.
kids.
It just takes so much time.
They do. They take so much time, and then like they're so good at guilting you. Like I guarantee you, I will go inside the house in after this interview, and my 7-year-old will be like, "I was so upset because you were in a meeting and I missed you, and
It's
oh, woe is me, and why do you
Why
work?"
weren't you inside?
Right? I know. I know. She
my
gets so devastated
my
by.
7-year-old the other night said I was in my room with the door closed and I heard, "I'm never gonna see mom again."
Oh my gosh.
Been
It's
for
been
two
like
hours. 2 hours.
that's it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that is my entire work-life
I
balance.
was gonna ask you, I was like, was that 5 minutes?
Yeah, it's short. It's short.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
So I do like I love a good spreadsheet. In the book, Chloe makes lists and then color codes her list.
Oh, right.
That's a me
No.
thing. Yeah, so I do try to be extremely organized, and I always plan to have things in for a deadline at least a week early so that when kids get sick and I lose work time, I have that baked in. Um, and so and it does stress me out when deadlines change, like even if it's to my benefit. I recently had a deadline change that gives me like 6 extra weeks, and I'm so stressed about it because I'm like, no, I planned out all my things. I planned out kid camps based on the original deadlines. Like, what are you doing to me? I know I have more time now, but no. So I think organization has been my approach to that. Obviously, everybody does it different, but
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a plan.
Good to have a plan.
Um, okay, so we sort of talked about blind spots in the writing with the authenticity or sensitivity readers. So I just have two more questions, and it's good because we're
We're
almost
good on
done
time.
on our time. So I would just ask next, what advice would you give other authors who feel discouraged or intimidated by the publishing industry, or for authors who are just getting started in their career?
yeah, so I will tell you things that are encouraging to me, and if you find them extremely discouraging, ignore them because, like, really, really, it's
Okay.
different for everyone why you stay in this industry. My critique partner texted me yesterday being like, why do we do this to ourselves? It's like, yeah, but it's supposed to be positive and encouraging. Um, but so the first thing that I find encouraging is the knowledge that it is not just me. And I can say that after a year having been a debut author, having looked at my sales numbers, having compared them with the sales numbers of other folks who have gotten similar recognitions that my first book got. Like, I think mentioned it was one of the best books, Publishers Weekly's best books of 2025, right? It got
Got
some
a lot of accolades.
it did. It got a lot of accolades. It got multiple starred reviews.
Yeah.
It is not selling well. No
Mhm.
one's books are selling well. Like, and no one that I have, we've compared numbers, they're all around the same. So the
Mm.
reality is right now, books are not selling well. There are several reasons for that. One of them is book bans have shrunk the market by 30 to 50%. This particularly affects marginalized creators, but it affects everyone because in some states now, they just don't have books in schools. They read excerpts in a textbook rather than having books to read. And that affects the discoverability of books. I can say as a librarian, kids don't discover books by surfing Amazon, even teens. They do not. And if they
No.
did, they would only be discovering the most popular titles, the titles that are already coming up high in the algorithm. So if books are taken out of their physical space, they're not discovering it, they're not recommending it to their friends, and those books are never moving up on the algorithm. So that's one of the challenges that we're facing. And if you are not aware, House Resolution 7661 in the United States House of Representatives is coming up for a floor vote. It is a national book ban. It would ban all books that mention not queer people, trans people, any book that includes trans characters or descriptions of trans experiences, and any book that they deem to that or whoever's enforcing the law in your locality would deem to include, quote, sexually oriented material, which we think is going to be code for queer material. Right now, some specific examples in the bill cite things like what they call lascivious dancing, which is not defined. I don't even know what that is. Some authors are like, is this Footloose now? Is that where we are?
Right?
But it
Are we
like
gonna be
it
like,
made it out of committee and it's coming up for a vote. So please call your representatives about that. That would hugely affect book markets. So a practical thing that you can do for your career is to stand up for book bans, go to your local library board meetings, school board meetings, call your representatives about this national bill and any state bills, because that does have a real impact. The things that are a little harder for us to stand up against, or impossible, is just declining literacy across the board. There are so many reasons for it. And it's really hard to pinpoint what we can do. To push back on that. That's true for kids. It's also true for adults. I think when we look at the amount of misinformation on, and this is not exclusive, it's talked about a lot as being like an exclusive, like far right political issue, but the misinformation is everywhere. I'm constantly, like, as a librarian nerd, correcting people who have commented on liberal memes, being like, hooray, this true thing just happened. I'm like, that is misinformation. Like, please do not believe any of the meme factories on the internet. Thank you. So, just promoting literacy wherever you can, encouraging people to pick up books to read with their kids, that could help as well to expand the market again. But then there's also just population decline. There are fewer kids now than there were 10 years ago. That trend is going to continue. That's just a reality. So it's not you. The market has genuinely shrunk. So if you're not breaking into the industry, it's not because you're not brilliant and wonderful and that your writing's not brilliant and wonderful. Um, my advice for your best shot to break into the industry, and this is based on my own experience, but also based on having read so many books in my life as a librarian and as a book reviewer for PW, you can tell the books that were written by someone who's trying to write a bestseller and the books that are written by someone who really cares about what they're writing about. And so like, and I like to use the example of like Captain Underpants and Dog Man. Like, you read those books and you know that Dave Pilkey loves what he is doing, right? Like, I mean, so it doesn't have to be like you're writing about an issue that you're passionate about. It can be like you're just writing a story that makes you really excited and happy about the universe because kids pick up on that too. And agents and editors know to look for that too. Like, they are keeping market trends in mind, but I really do think when I think about conversations that I've had with my agent, that I've had with my editor, when they say they've fallen in love with something, it has to do with like the passion of the storytelling and the realness of the characters. And so I think that if you have a project that you're working on that you're really passionate about, and then you have a project that you're like, well, but maybe this will fit with this other romantasy trend, even though I don't like to write romantasy, but seems to be selling okay. You know,
But
write what you love because then you haven't wasted your time, even if it doesn't get published. Like, you've told an amazing story, you've worked through it, learn something about yourself and your characters in the process. Like write what you love. And that's your best shot at getting into the industry. And it also makes the waiting bearable, I think.
That's appreciated.
Yeah.
Because there's a
Great
lot of
advice.
waiting. There's a lot
There's
of
a lot of
waiting.
waiting. And I also feel like this is just me talking about being an author as well. You are going to read that manuscript so many times. You are going to be sick and tired. I just turned in copy edits. Sick and tired of your own work. And then there's still more. So you better be really, really, really in love with that story.
Yes. My agent once advised me, and I have lived by this rule. If you start feeling sick of your work before it's gone out on sub, it's time to put it out on sub, or at least take like a couple months break, because you're going to have to read it so many more times with your editor. You cannot be sick of it before it has even gotten onto your editor's desk. Like, don't over edit it to the point that the joy is gone.
Awesome. All right, well, that does it for my list.
Okay.
Hooray, list of questions.
Yes, a fantastic list of questions.
Yes. So thank you again, Susan. This was a joy.
It was so fun. Thank you guys for inviting me. I was so honored.
Again, to anyone who watches this, get it. Karen and I both read it, loved it.
Loved it.
I couldn't put it down. I like stayed up late reading
Yeah,
it.
okay,
It was
so
so good.
I got through halfway and then I was like, oh my gosh, something's gonna happen. And I was like, okay, one more chapter, one more chapter, one more chapter, one more chapter. And I got to the very last chapter. I'm like, oh my goodness, it is so late. I'm gonna be so tired. Maybe 5 hours of
Worth
sleep.
it.
Like so worth it. So worth it. So good.
So,
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that you guys enjoyed it. It was my debut, and it is truly a weird and exciting feeling when something that you've written starts getting read by lots of people. So it's because, I always share my writing with like my mom. But it's really cool when people in another state have read something you've written and connected with it. So thank you guys.
of course.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll talk to you again, hopefully, maybe for your next books.
Oh, yes, that would be wonderful. Yes,
Yes.
September.
September.
Also, if you want to wait, September 22nd is the date that this one comes out, but it's also the date that the paperback with the new
Double.
cover comes out. And so if it were me, I would want the purple cover, personally.
I know, the purple is so pretty.
They're both gorgeous.
So
I love
pretty.
it.
Did I? No. September 22nd. Okay. All right.
All right.
We're gonna stop
the
recording.
recording.